Well, welcome everyone. My name is Allison Wood, and I'm one of the co-founders of Ocean Ambassadors Canada.
The Secret Lives of a Plastic Beverage Container. Where do they really end up?
Sorry about that. I'm one of the co-founders of Ocean Ambassadors Canada, and with me today we have Chantal Hancock, who's our programs coordinator. Well, this is the second in our Ocean Health speaker series. And last month, our first one, we had just under 100 people registered, and today we've cracked that. We are more than 100 people registered, so it's great to see all of this interest. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this speaker series. The West Vancouver Foundation is our primary sponsor, so thank you very much for this. And we also have the North Shore News and Holly Burn Sailing Club as sponsors. Thank you very much to you. Before I introduce the speakers, I want to just talk about questions. So we're anticipating on getting a lot of questions tonight, and we encourage your questions. In the interest of time, when you think of a question during the presentation, just type it into the chat box at the bottom of the screen. And at the end of the presentation, Chantal is going to ask the questions on our behalf. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for tonight. So we have Alan Langdon, the President and CEO of Return It, and Baljit Lalli, who's the Vice President of Corporate Communications and Stakeholder Relations, also at Return It. So as the President and CEO of Return It, Alan oversees the most successful used beverage container management program in Canada, with a mandate to develop, manage, and improve systems to recover used packaging and end-of-life products from consumers and ensure that they're properly recycled and not landfilled. And Baljit is the Vice President of Corporate Communications Stakeholder Relations. She's responsible for developing and managing Return It's corporate communications and stakeholder strategy to advance Return It's goals and initiatives. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Bal and Alan. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, our pleasure, Allison. Thanks for the introduction. And I love it that it's so informal that people are saying hello to each other on the chat. It's great. And I know a few people on here, so it's hopefully going to be a great discussion tonight. We're going to give a short presentation, and then we do these presentations quite a bit, and a lot of it is just there's a lot of great communication through the Q&A. So looking forward to lots of questions, and please don't be shy. Feel free to ask any question, and we'll do our best to respond. So Bal's got the controls, so I'm dependent on her to put it. So tonight our presentation is really focused on fostering a world where nothing is waste, what it means for our oceans, and we'll talk a little bit more about the title and how it relates to our social purpose and where we're going as an organization. Val? So in terms of who we are, so we're responsible for managing the recycling system for most ready-to-drink beverage containers. Starting next year, it'll be all ready-to-drink beverage containers because milk and milk substitutes will be coming in the deposit system as of February 1st next year. BC is the only jurisdiction where these types of programs are 100% managed by industry. And, kudos to the province. I generally say this, we're thankful to live in a province where, both governments regardless of who's in power, the government has been pretty consistent in a system that really asks industry it sets targets and then asks industry to meet those targets and come up with innovative ways to reach the goals and the targets that the government sets for us. I should also note that we also manage the electronics program and also provide support to the major appliance program. So that's also in our portfolio. Those aren't like beverage containers. Beverage containers is our core program. Those are programs that other people run, but we help manage and support. Right now we're employing both directly and indirectly over 750 people. And since 1994, we've recycled over 21 billion containers. Just in terms of quickly our presence, you can see the map. We've got quite a number of collection sites. We're over 170 now. So about 98% of the population will have access to a Return It facility. And that's, we also have one of the most well-known brands, but we have 99% consumer awareness about where people or the fact that people can take their beverage containers back for recycling, and an 89% brand awareness. In terms of our infrastructure, so we have 168 independently owned depots. We have 5 Express and Go locations and 1 Return Express Plus location, which is essentially a cashless depot we run in downtown Vancouver and Yaletown. We're pretty well covered on the North Shore. We have 3 depots, 2 depots right now, 3 depots. One of our depots, Lonsdale's, going to be closing, but we're going to be opening up Express Plus down on Esplanade, hopefully by the end of June. We also have been fortunate to open up 2 of our Express and Go stations, which we'll talk about more, at the North Vancouver transfer station, as well as the Park Royal Shopping Center. In addition to the kind of drop-off network, we also have a network of retailers that we also pick up from. That represents about 5% of our volume. And then in terms of other collection points, we also have about 2% of our volume comes back through the Blue Box program run by Recycle BC, and we have an agreement with their partner, the processor Green for Life, to get any containers going through the Blue Box come back to us as well. In terms of recovery rate, so I took over as CEO in 2018, and we've been on a kind of an upward swing on a recovery rate. When I took over, we were at 75.6, and over the last 2 years, we've gone up to 77, and then in 2019, 78.1. I am expecting a bit of a dip in 2020, just as related to COVID, where we had about half our network closed for a 2 to 3 month period. But still, I expect that we'll recycle over 1 billion containers, much like we've done in the past. About 380 million of those in 2019 were plastic beverage containers. And when you can equate it to a reduction of about 105,000 tons of CO2 equivalent being released in the atmosphere. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bal to talk about sustainability and innovation through our social purpose. Bal, take it away.
Thanks, Alan. Hi, everyone. Great to be joining you tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're driving sustainability and innovation through the adoption of a social purpose. So in 2019, after celebrating 25 years as an organization, we embarked on a journey kind of to define our why we exist for the betterment of our society, stakeholders, and the community. And this was important for us as we looked at the next 25 years ahead, but also important as we look at engaging employees and recruiting and retaining employees. And so you'll see on this slide a graphic that really depicts all the feedback we received. We did a pretty comprehensive stakeholder consultation process with all of our employees and over 30 external and internal stakeholders. And this was important for us because we wanted to define a social purpose that was very authentic to our business and making sure that it was embedded within everything we do. As part of our journey in defining our social purpose, we also looked at our impact areas. So you'll see this Venn diagram. So part of this exercise is really to look at our core competencies and assets. What differentiates us from other industry groups, given that we've been around for 25 years. And then we also looked at societal issues and trends. We looked at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a guide and lens to this process. And I should mention this was also through the support of the United Way Social Purpose Institute in helping to look at defining our social purpose. And so the societal issues and trends for us were important because it was kind of defining those areas where we feel as an organization we can make a difference. These were also environmental trends that we are seeing that we're shaping and impacting our industry as a whole. And so between the two, the middle spot would be our social purpose. So our social purpose kind of needing to triangulate the world with our business opportunities and our core assets. So based on this comprehensive process, our social purpose is to foster a world where nothing is waste. And this is our North Star. It's embedded within everything we do. It shapes who we are and how we operate and grow. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what the social purpose statement means for our business. And because each word was purposely chosen to make sure that it had some defined metrics for our business. So when we talk about foster, it's about collaboration and partnerships. We recognize and understand that partnerships are critical to our success, and we can't go about this alone. So you'll see on the slides a couple of the partnerships we've developed over the years and more recently. We have a great partnership with Ocean Ambassadors Canada, where we're focused on educating and empowering youth and the next generation. So through this partnership, we support Ocean Ambassadors in educating youth in terms of the challenge with plastic pollution, and also what they can be doing to make a difference. And then it also includes this experiential exercise where they're paddleboarding on the water. And that was important because it creates that personal and visceral connection to the water. So if you enjoy the water, you're more likely to protect it. The other partnership I'll touch on is the partnership we have with the Binners Project. The Binners Project is a group that supports the binning community in providing economic opportunities and reducing the stigma. And so this was a great partnership where we work with the Binners group in helping to develop a universal cart to support binners in picking up recyclables. A lot of members of the binners community had challenges, or physical capabilities were limited in terms of when they were picking up beverage containers and returning it to the depot. So it was a great partnership in developing a cart that not only served their needs, but also supported them in capturing more beverage containers for recycling. And the other partnerships we have also is with Oceanwise and the Pacific Salmon Foundation. With Oceanwise, we're working with them on also empowering the next generation around ocean plastics. And with the Pacific Salmon Foundation, we're working with them on microplastics as well. In terms of the world, this is where we recognize that in order to make a sustainable difference, it requires influence in other parts of the world. And so we've been around for 26 years now, and so we saw an opportunity for us to help influence systems in other parts of the world through education, expertise, and advice. Ocean pollution alone isn't a local problem, it's a global challenge. So we recognize our part in that. And I'll talk, Alan will also speak a little bit more about our podcast series. And that's a great, it's a podcast that's featured through anywhere you get your podcasts. And this is where Alan engages with experts from around the world to talk about sustainability, recycling, and the circular economy. And lastly, nothing is waste. And this is all about redefining how we produce and view waste. So it's really moving, as you'll see from the video that you saw at the beginning of the presentation, from a linear model to more of a circular one. And so how can we reimagine the roles of materials, products, and resources, and seeing waste more as a misplaced resource that can be used to produce new product. So it's getting away from using virgin material to produce new product. How can we keep the current material within our economy? And now I will turn it over to Alan to talk a little bit more about how we've embedded our social purpose in everything that we do.
Awesome, Belle, thanks. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So one of the main things we've tried to do at Return It is obviously we want to divert material from our natural environment. And one of the ways to do that from our perspective is just make our system much more convenient. So we're conscious that, you know, people are under more and more time constraints, and particularly younger people are looking for prizing convenience over everything else. And so over the last couple of years, we've rolled out our Return It Express program, which is really, you know, a whole new way to recycle where people can open an online account. And then when they come down to our depot or one of our Express and Go stations, they just bring their containers in a bag, print off the label, attach the label to the bag, and then they can just drop it through one of the windows. And then the containers are counted, sorted, counted, and uploaded to their online account. When there's when there's an amount of more than $10 in the account, then they can redeem it anytime. But we have a number of people that are just letting the account grow and then redeeming it at, you know, when it's at $50, $100, or even $200. And we also have started to send bag labels to people free through the mail. Next slide. In terms of our registrants. When we started this, so we had been piloting it for a few years, and we were at about 20,000 customers in 2018. We started to expand it quite heavily in 2019 and got up to 55,000 customers. And then we're hoping for lots of success in 2020. And then of course, COVID hit, and suddenly people didn't want to go into our depots. They didn't want to stand around for 15 minutes waiting for the refund. And so we actually added 85,000 customers last year. And right as of today, I just looked at the stats, we've now gone over 150,000. So it's quite clear that with all the concerns that have been raised by the pandemic and just the need for added convenience, that we're getting a lot of positive consumer response. Consumers tell us there's a 95% improved customer satisfaction level. We now have it in over 70 of our locations in the province, and that includes the one Express Plus facility with hopefully another one coming to Esplanade in North Vancouver before the summer. And we're hoping to have over 100 locations covering all markets in BC with a population over 30,000 in the next 2 years. So that should put us somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 locations. I've talked about this. One of the other innovations we've addressed is our Express and Go stations. So these are really reconfigured sea containers. They're powered by solar energy, and they're unstaffed, and that means they can have longer hours. So they typically operate either from 7 in the morning to 10 at night, or from 8 to 8, depending on where they're located. We've got 5 locations: Tofino, Burnaby, which is actually SFU Burnaby in partnership with Nesters, the North Vancouver transfer station run by Metro Vancouver, Park World Shopping Center in West Vancouver, and the Big White Ski Resort. We're looking to expand to a minimum of 5 locations this year. Our next one is coming online at the Coquitlam transfer station sometime in May. And we're also talking to a number of different, well, 2 or 3 different retailers about starting to site these on parking lots at different retailers in the next little while. We thought the smaller format's been really key to us in terms of increasing the accessibility of our program. It allows us to get into dense urban areas where we'd have difficulty siting a traditional depot or even a small storefront Express Plus. And also in smaller rural locations that maybe don't have the kind of quantity or volume of containers that could support a full conventional depot, staff depot. So for places like Tofino or Big White, it's been a perfect fit in terms of providing access and service to the community and doing it in a way that's economic and affordable for Return It. Next slide. We're also moving ahead with piloting in-depot automation technology. So we currently have 1 depot, and you'll see the reverse vending machines you see there are in our Return It depot in Burnaby, the Kensington depot, Kensington Mall on Hastings. We're going to be adding 3 more depots in the fall, 1 in Chilliwack and 2 in Kelowna. And we think that this is really the next phase. So we've gotten great response from Express, but there's still some people that want to get their money right away. And so they can come in and use these reverse vending machines. Again, it limits touch points for both our staff and for the customers. And it can handle high volume, particularly of small plastic and aluminum containers. And we think over time, especially for our large volume depots, it's going to provide them with some operational and cost efficiencies. The other thing we've been doing is, in terms of added convenience, is also simplifying our system. And this was when I joined in 2018, we had 3 levels of deposit, 5, 10, and 20. And we could talk a lot about, whether that was the most effective system. But in going to different parts of the world, and particularly Oregon, where they've moved to a flat deposit, we thought that probably the most efficient thing would be to move everything to a flat deposit. So in 2019, we increased the deposit. I think the first deposit program to voluntarily increase our deposit in North America from 5 cents to 10 cents for all our small containers. And then last October, we did the second phase in the unified deposit, and we dropped our 20-cent deposit down to 10. We've done this for a couple of reasons. One is it's just going to make the whole system just much simpler, which allows us to obtain efficiencies all through the system, both at our depots and sorting, as well as the different parts of the supply chain in terms of transportation and processing. It's going to allow us to eventually reduce, I think, as of this year week now, when we sort all our containers, it goes into 21 different sorts, and we hope to get that down to 5 by the end of this year, beginning of next year. And then it also reduces consumer confusion, because we get lots of consumers be confused by how much refund they should get. Now, if they've got 10 containers, they know it's $1, 40 containers, $4. Just much easier for people to calculate how much money they should be getting back. Next slide. And we've also started to expand to other material streams. So one of the things we're conscious of, we've got this infrastructure. Is there other opportunities to utilize this common infrastructure to provide greater service to residents? So we, in 2019, looking at the issues with textiles, and I know that there were, a number of municipalities that had taken out bins, and even private sector companies that have previously hosted clothing bins have taken them out just because of issues. There's safety. There was obviously some fatalities, which of course is incredibly unfortunate, but also just even day-to-day illegal dumping, which really turned private businesses and municipalities off of hosting these bins. So we thought there was an opportunity to utilize our infrastructure and provide an additional service. So we launched a textiles program in 2019. I'm happy to say that as of today, we're now in a partnership with Salvation Army, and we have over 35 of our return locations in the Lower Mainland accepting used textiles. The only thing is we ask they be clean and dry, and that would include clothing, household textiles like towels and sheets, as well as footwear. And so far in that time since we launched in 2019, we've now diverted almost 500 metric tons of textiles. And we're excited to hopefully expand it both in the Lower Mainland and maybe even in Southern Vancouver Island in the fall. Also started to look at issue of coffee cups. So, we've been managing sealed beverages for a number of years. And, been various conversations about how we could support recycling efforts for other beverage containers. And so last February, we launched the first dedicated coffee cup recycling for commercial and public buildings. We had 5 downtown locations. Results from the first month were awesome. We were seeing people separate their containers, put the lids in one slot, you can see in the bottom picture, and then put the cups in the other, getting really clean material. People were using the liquid trap in the middle to make sure the liquid is dumped out. And then COVID hit, and all the work we had done to establish these recycling stations in private buildings basically went up in smoke. So in the interim, we've continued our communication with our partners, Tim Hortons and A&W, and there's a shared goal of trying to continue and find a new way to continue the project. We're all cognizant that there's still millions of these cups being disposed of in the garbage, and so we're looking at relaunching the program hopefully this fall. Looking at some sort of public space or plaza program, as well as in addition to maybe going back to buildings and even having it available in the cafes or restaurants where people buy their cups. As part of that, we're trying to launch a dual program where we would also be supporting a reusable and returnable cup sharing pilot program. So that would eliminate the need for single-use coffee cups. And those cups would be made of recyclable materials and produce half the carbon footprint of a single-use disposable cup. Can be used as many as 130 plus times. So right now we're working with our partners. They in themselves have partners in terms of the cups. And then we're looking at providing the shared infrastructure for the collection and logistics, and maybe even supporting the washing of it. So it's a bit of a new venture for us. There's still lots of pieces we have to work out. But we're having regular calls with our partners trying to ensure that if we're going to go ahead with cup recycling, that we could do it in tandem with some sort of cup share program as well. And in terms of how that would work, so cups are, customers are served a reusable coffee cup with a special chip linked to their account. Cups are returned to designated drop-off point, then they're picked up and washed, and then cups are redistributed to cafes and stores. And so you could have it, the cup is used one morning and then it's back in the store the next morning. There's lots of work and lots of different players in this field right now. We've been spending a long time on it. But I think that particularly in the city of Vancouver, I think this is something that's going to move ahead next year, and we're hoping to be able to provide, again, some sort of support around the collection. We know collection and logistics, and that's really where we think we can support this type of program and working with the kind of partners that we have. The other thing is, we're conscious that, part of a circular economy is trying to see if there's an ability to repair items rather than just, have them thrown out. So we're partnering this fall with a group, Metrovan Repair Cafes. So they have repair cafes at various parts of the Lower Mainland, and we're going to be doing 2 kind of pop-up repair cafes at 2 of our return it locations. People can come down on those specific days, and they'll be able to take textiles, electronics, jewelry, small appliances, bikes, and have those there'll be volunteers on hand to look at them and see if they can repair them. And then if you can't, probably opportunities to recycle as well. And so, yeah, we hope to launch this in 2020, but we'll be moving ahead in 2021 with at least 2 locations, and excited about the partnership. And then, of course, cleaner transportation is front of mind, because I think we're all aware that greenhouse gas and climate change is an existential threat to our way of existence and to the earth as a whole. So we're really focused on finding ways that we can decarbonize our fleet. So this last year, we introduced Canada's first of its kind compressed natural gas hybrid electric compaction truck. So this hybrid electric collection truck, which uses some pretty innovative technology from a company called Hylian in Texas, allows us to replace 2 conventional diesel trucks. It also means we're able to increase the number of beverage containers transported in one trip by 6-fold, from 150,000 containers to 900,000. We'll be expanding this to add 2 more trucks this fall, and we're hoping that by the time we convert the full fleet, that we'll be able to reduce our GHGs by 25%. And there is the ability with these trucks, the long-term objective is these trucks will be compatible with hydrogen fuel. And so it could be an option down the road where we're able to actually switch out from natural gas into hydrogen and even have further GHG reduction. So we're excited about that opportunity as well. One of the benefits of the electric assist that's different, it's almost counterintuitive to what you'd see in a hybrid car. In a hybrid car, you typically use the electric when you're at your kind of slowest, and then as you go faster, you use the gas. The electric assist on these trucks is really used to help us both accelerate to pick up speed, but also it provides some extra power as we're going uphill. So without that, we probably wouldn't have been able to carry as many containers or as much volume as we are able. We just wouldn't have had the power to do it. So this electric assist is going to be great for us, both in terms of the CNG and as well as if we're able to transition eventually to some sort of hydrogen fuel as well. And we're also collaborating. I think a big part of what we're doing is try and collaborate with partners both within BC and around the country and around the globe. So we've been working for a number of years with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is kind of the preeminent circular economy think tank in the world, and one that has relationships with all of the biggest consumer goods companies, retailers, and other large companies across the world. So we've signed on to their global commitment to try and end plastic pollution. Our commitment as part of that, in addition to supporting the global objectives, is to recycle 80% of our plastic beverage containers sold in BC and to eliminate single-use plastic film from our supply chain. And we're making great progress on both those objectives and should have them in place by 2025. We've also become a partner of the Canada Plastics Pact, whose objectives is really the same as Ellen MacArthur on a global basis, but just kind of focusing on Canada in particular. So looking to eliminate unnecessary or problematic plastic packaging, innovate so the plastic we do need can be safely reused, recycled, or composted, and circulate all the plastic items we use to keep them in the economy and out of the environment. And just last week, actually, we were announced that we're going to be joining their advisory committee as well. And so looking forward to playing a key role going forward in helping make the Canada Plastics Pact a success. And then another organization we partner with primarily around transportation is the Catalyst Business Alliance. So this is another group. It's a lot of like-minded organizations like Arteryx and Modo and a few others. And so we're really looking at its ability for us to come together as like-minded organizations, talk about innovations like what we're doing on transportation, and really champion the clean economy and champion that transition to a much cleaner, greener economy. And then as Val related before, so we also have our own podcast, Closing the Loop. We've actually had Allison on, and was a great episode, one of our best. And our last one was actually the Canada Plastics Pact. We talked to the CEO of the Natural Step, as well as one of their technical advisors, just about, so we could in an informal way kind of introduce the topic of the pact and its objectives and some of the challenges for the plastic pack going forward. So our next one is going to be an episode around compostable plastics, where we have a couple of people from the city of Vancouver who've invested a lot of time in the issue of single use and some of the opportunities, but also some of the challenges with compostable plastics. So that'll be an interesting episode. And as Val mentioned, it's available wherever you get your podcasts, be it on Apple, Spotify, or Google. And would just encourage everyone to subscribe and let us know what you think. And also, you know, if you have any suggestions on guests that we should include. All right, so I want to thank everyone. I could see the questions ticking in, so I know we're going to have lots of time for Q&A. So I'll just turn it over to Allison or Chantel and start taking questions. Look forward to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alan and Val. And thank you everyone for all of your questions. We do have quite a few of them. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll make sure that we post them on our website and get those answered for you. So our first question is, are plastic bottles fully cleaned and reused or totally melted and remolded into bottles? And is there a limit on how many times plastic bottles can be recycled?
That's a great question. So yeah, so the plastic bottles we collect, they do get washed, melted down, and then they're turned into pellets, which are eventually used to make new plastic bottles. You know, how many times? There's kind of varying estimates, but I would say somewhere between 5 and 10 times the material from a plastic bottle can be recycled and then made into a new bottle. And again, I think the plastic that we collect is some of the cleanest in the world. You know, I think that we're probably on that higher end. You know, where you have lower end is maybe bottles collected through the curbside where they're more contaminated, but we have a pretty clean stream. So I'd say we're probably close to 10 times the amount we can have it recycled.
Right. Our next question is, can you please explain what EPR is and what it means for sustainability? Yeah,
so I've probably been working in EPR for over 10 years now. So EPR is extended producer responsibility. It's really a policy construct to extend the responsibility back to the producer for managing the waste from their products or packaging. So EPR has been in BC for 25 years. It first started with the paint program back in 1994. So maybe that's almost 27 years now. And it's been a really successful model in BC in particular, and we've seen it go across Canada. And we're now seeing a big push for EPR for packaging in the United States. So there's bills right now in New York and Oregon looking at introducing similar models to what we have in Canada down there. But essentially what it happens is it means the producers have to either on their own or through some sort of collective organization like Return It, establish a way to collect the material that they're putting into the marketplace and ensure that it gets recycled responsibly. So in British Columbia, it falls under the auspices of the recycling regulation. And so when, if there's a new product or new category of products, they'll just be added to the regulation as a schedule, and then the producers of those products or packaging need to develop programs. So we're under Schedule 1, which is beverage containers. Schedule 5 is packaging and printed paper. That's managed by Recycle BC. And probably the other big program is the electronics program. I think it's under Schedule 3, and that's run by the Electronic Products Recycling Association. Of course, we support and do a lot of the on-the-ground work for them in BC. So I've been a big proponent of EPR for a long time. I don't think it's the whole solution to our challenges around sustainability. But what I think is important about extended producer responsibility is two things. One is it forces producers to actually start to measure and quantify how much material they're putting in the marketplace. And I think that's the first step to really figuring out how you're going to do things more sustainably. But then it also puts the cost for managing those containers or that packaging back on the producers. So our system is, roughly $90 million a year for beverage containers. The packaging program run by Recycle BC is $120 million. And so, if I look at the city of Vancouver, 10 years ago, it would have been your average citizen through their utility rates paying for recycling. And now I don't think most residents, and same thing on the North Shore and other jurisdictions, it's actually industry that's paying for recycling. So if I live in Vancouver and I get my curbside picked up, it's an industry funded service. The truck is paid for by industry. and the recycling is then taken back to an industry-run processor, and then that material is recycled responsibly, and then they have to report to the Ministry of Environment. So I think it's one step. I think there's lots of other steps to do in terms of reducing the demand or the need for material in the first place, but I think it's an important component of moving to a circular economy for sure.
Perfect. I think we answered a few questions within that one. Our next question is, have hard and soft plastic formulas changed so that they're easier to recycle? And what exactly happens to the soft plastics when they are recycled?
Yeah, so great question. So, I think a big part of what the Canada Plastics Pact is about is trying to have that dialogue across the supply chain. Because, the one thing, and it's come up even in the early dialogues we've had in the Canada Plastics Pact, plastic is not just one thing, it's a multitude of different things. And it's a multitude of different things, not just in terms of it's made from, there's a variety of different plastics, different polymers you make it from, but it has different uses, and some of those uses, are for corrosives or chemicals and other things. And so that impacts your ability. Like you can't put a used oil container in your blue box because there's viscosity, the oil from the viscosity of the oil can contaminate if it's put in. If it's managed as a stream of used oil containers, you can manage it. So has the formula changed? The formula hasn't changed, but there's a lot of work that's gone into doing things like removing dye from some of the plastics. So some of the berry packaging used to have some sort of dye that was put in the plastic that's been removed. There's been a lot of work on adhesives. So sometimes the adhesives on things like your clamshell containers you get from the bakery or deli were so tough to get off, they actually wouldn't come off in the recycling process and would act as a contaminant. And I think there's more work to do. But a lot of the work right now is as much trying to come up with, if I look at beverage containers, they've been really successful because the industry as a whole has taken on some key design components. Almost all our bottles are made out of the same plastic PET. Almost everyone's moved to the same caps and the same labels. And so by having kind of standardization across the industry, it makes it easy to recycle. And then you have economies of scale, it creates more value in the material. That's been more difficult to do in the broader consumer products group, but I think there's a lot of work internationally and nationally to get there. To go to soft plastics is quite recyclable. So if you're talking about your plastic shopping bags, they're very much recyclable. The challenge with soft plastics is just collecting it in any quantity and just how you have to collect it. It's not really conducive to collecting in the blue box because then it acts as a contaminant at processors. So when I used to work on the blue box program, and one of our processors had to shut down every day, probably within 4 or 5 hours of starting, just to go around and clean out all the plastic bags that got caught up in their machinery. So, you can drop off plastic bags at a number of our depots, at London Drugs, at a number of transfer stations. And when that material is collected as a clean stream, because it's mostly a low density polyethylene, it's eminently recyclable, and it'll show up as material in new plastic shopping bags, as well as other products as well. And one of the challenges with trying to calculate our success in recycling that material is it's often used for other purposes. So lots of people use shopping bags for dog poop or garbage. And so it's really tough to get any sort of meaningful recycling rate on managing that material. But from a recycling point of view, it's definitely recyclable.
Okay. Our next question comes from Eleanor. How does the deposit system work? Is this legislated provincially, collected at a point of sale, and then flown through the return it?
Yeah, so the deposit system really, it's under the provincial regulation, the recycling regulation. So there's both a deposit and a container recycling fee charged on containers at the point of purchase. That money is sent back to Encore. People then get the deposit back when they bring back the containers, and they can do it either by going through our regular kind of over-the-counter system or through our express system. And it's a successful model. It's led to high recovery rates for a range of beverage containers, both in Canada and in 10 states in the US and a number of jurisdictions in Europe. And I expect that we're going to see more deposit systems going forward, just because there's such a intense need to increase the recovery rates of these materials. And deposit systems have proven to be the most efficient way to increase those recovery rates in a rather fast and rapid rate.
I think this might be our last question for the night. It's kind of COVID related. How are biomedical waste such as syringes, gowns, masks disposed of in BC? Are they incinerated, and if so, where?
So they're definitely incinerated. I think there's a couple facilities in different parts of the province. There's certainly the one in Burnaby. And that's just a function of the type of waste it is. Yeah, you can't, there's not much you can do with it given the contamination and the, yeah, I won't get into it, but yes, it needs to be incinerated, and there's a couple facilities in different parts of the province.
Thank you everyone again for all of your questions, and we'll make sure that we get those answered for you.
There's some more in the chat if you haven't seen them, Chantel.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're just actually out of time, Alan.
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't realize we'd gone on that long. My apologies.
For all of the unanswered questions, we will work with Val and Alan and get some answers to those, and we'll post them with the recording of this online. So I wanted to say a big thank you to Val and Alan. We appreciate it. And just want to thank once again our sponsors, the West Van Foundation, Hollyburn Sailing Club, and North Shore News. And to draw your attention to our next event, which is May 12th, we have Rhiannon Moore, who's been working with Ocean Ambassadors since we started. She's a microplastics researcher, did a lot of work with OceanWise and did her master's degree in beluga whales in the Arctic. And now she's working with the City of Victoria's Zero Waste team. So she's got a really interesting story. Before I leave you, I just wanted to, again, say a big thank you to Val and Alan. And I think that the work with Return It is doing is really interesting, and look forward to continuing the conversation. So, and answering the questions that we didn't get to. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, Allison and Chantel. I just wondered, is it possible to ask further questions if they come up later on?
Yeah. Alyssa, do you have my email address?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So
I believe it was sent in the email.
Yeah. So definitely and you can also find it on the website. So feel free to ask for sure.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for putting this on.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Have a
See you
good night.
guys.
Do we still have Alan and Val? No, I don't think so. I think they've gone. Okay. Well, thanks very much, everybody. Have a good night. So Chantel, we won't hang up. And Chantel, we will look in the chat. So what we can do is maybe screenshot it. You want me to do it?
Mhm. Sure. Wait 1 second. Let me just see what I can do here.
Are you good?
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can just keep all of these questions in another folder. I think I pretty much have everything.
Yeah, good. So I'm just trying to see who we have on here still. So we've got it all for sure. Last chance.
I'm just doing another double check. Yeah, all the ones that were kind of like repetitive, I just kind of merged into one question.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know if anybody else is listening, but so maybe I'll call you.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
Bye.